Hi, I'm Dan Fishman. I'm the winemaker here at Donham Estate, and I want to tell you a little bit about your 2023 winter allocation wines today. We're featuring the wines from the 2020 vintage, which, as a lot of people know, was a challenging vintage across a lot of Northern California. Started out with some frost in the winter or in the early spring, and so that reduced our yields a little bit right from the beginning. And then after a pretty mild summer, we then had a big heat spike in August that led to some massive wildfires. And so because of that smoke pressure, we didn't want to have that affect the wine. So we started harvesting right away. We were able to bring everything in about a week. So we avoided any smoke problems. But because it was pretty early in the season, we wound up with a lot of wines that are a little bit lighter in style, a little bit kind of more red fruit driven, and some really, I think, interesting wines. So some wines that are a little bit different for Donham, but wines that we're really proud of and that I think show really well even with the tough vintage. This allocation features, I think, one of the most interesting wines of the 2020 vintage, which is the Russian River Estate Pinot. So this is blended from multiple different blocks. It has the Calera clone, the Pommard, and the 667, as well as a little bit of Donham clone. And because of the smoke and the heat that we had, we harvested this the earliest we ever had. So it's really a little bit lighter in style, a little lower alcohol. It's interesting though, I think it has a really consistent flavor profile with previous vintage. You still get a lot of the dark fruit, a little bit of cherry, but what you find is a little bit of a more elegant palate, a little bit kind of the finish. You don't get as much of the alcohol there because it's just a little bit less ripe. So I think a really interesting Russian River Pinot. I think this is one that will definitely age really well, and I think really shows how in a tricky vintage you can still make a really great wine. Just have to be a little bit flexible in your decision making. Thanks for joining me to taste through the winter allocation wines. I think with this featuring of the 2020 vintage, it shows that even in a difficult vintage, we can still do a lot of interesting things, make some really special wines. And I think it's also important to note how low the production is on all these wines. So this will be our smallest production year, hopefully ever, certainly less than we've made recently. So there's not a lot of the wine, but there's some really great wines, and thanks for taking the time to taste them with me.